Well, just a few weeks ago, we crowned a new national champion. South Carolina went wire to wire to win the 2024 women's basketball NCAA tournament title. Since then, we've had a W draft, and our heads have been spinning from everyone and their mother jumping in the transfer portal. And then we got a host of college coaching changes across the nation as well. But one in particular out west on the farm as a trailblazer in the women's basketball game retires. We're going to break it down and talk about all of it today right here on Locked On Women's Basketball.
Ogunbowale for the win.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.
Happy Monday, friends. It is April 22nd, 2024. Happy Earth Day. While the college basketball season has come to a close, there really is never a dull moment in sports. And so I hope you have found the next best thing to keep you going over these course of the next few weeks. Hi, everybody. I am Missy Heidrick, national correspondent at The Next. Thank you for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Well, I'm sure they are still celebrating in some form or fashion in Columbia, South Carolina, as the Gamecocks are wearing their national championship crowns. Undefeated, and they have done it with pride after winning the 2024 women's basketball title. But even while the Final Four unfolded, there were coaching changes happening all over the country. Conferences, as we know it, were ending their reign of time, and over 1,100 players have entered the transfer portal. But the news out west in Palo Alto, California, probably struck the hardest for all of those in the women's basketball world and in college sports in general, the retirement of Tara VanDerveer at Stanford. What does it mean in the scope of women's basketball history? What's next in this new era at Stanford and their women's basketball program? Here to help me wade through all of it is our very own Hall of Famer and a longtime women's sports and women's basketball journalist, Michelle Smith. Good afternoon, Michelle. And you are out there in the wonderful state of California. I'm sure the sun is shining in most places out there, but things look a lot different in Palo Alto, California, as we look at the Stanford women's basketball program. Just a few weeks ago, it was announced that Tara VanDerveer was going to be retiring. 38 seasons at Stanford, 3 national titles, the all-time winningest coach in college basketball, 1,216 wins as she hangs up the whistle. You were there, but I think it probably caught some people by surprise, and maybe this wasn't the time that everyone thought that coach was going to step down. But just your thoughts initially when you heard that news.
It was a Tuesday night when it broke. So, like at 7:00 in California, I was out to dinner with a friend and my phone started buzzing. And then I looked at the messages and then said, wait, what? And then looked at my friend, said, can you get the check? I got to go. And then just ran out on my bestie. It was one of those moments. I was surprised. Everybody knows, she's 70 years old. She's coached for a long time. There are big changes coming. It's not that I thought that Tara was going to coach forever. I thought that she might take the program into the ACC before she handed it off to Kate Paye, who's been her assistant coach for 17 years and a Stanford player and a Stanford lifer, really. I thought she might take them into the ACC and get them settled before she handed it off to Kate. But, my understanding is, and Kate joked that, I'll believe it when the news conference happens, and the news conference happened, right? She made a decision, and I think she had been, from people that I have talked to, she'd been laying breadcrumbs all year. And, maybe it's fitting that Tara goes out with the Pac-12, right? There's a symmetry to this that's undeniable. But it's also just, in the same way that I couldn't imagine starting a season without Pat Summitt a dozen years ago. it's hard to imagine starting the next season without Tara VanDerveer on the sidelines. I mean, she is the winningest coach in college basketball history for now. Gino is 3 behind her, and presuming that he's not going anywhere between now and next season, he will pass her. But she's, her imprint on the game is absolutely undeniable. The tributes were national. Her mentorship, her coaching tree, the place that her players occupy in all places in sport, not just in collegiate sport, from the executives that are at the NBA level to Bethany Donovan at the WNBA, to Jane Appel at the Players Association, to Neko Ogumike's leadership with the Players Association, and Chene and television, and Rosgold and Wood. Like, it's her imprint is all over women's basketball. And so, I think it's going to be strange and different. And I'm also happy for her. She's 70 years old, and, I think that she's got some things that she wants to do, and it's just too hard now. It's too hard to imagine having a life outside of whatever this is that we're doing right now, with the transfer portal, with, they lost Kiki Iriafen, which was a huge, Kiki has her Stanford degree. She got it because of summer school. She will leave with a Stanford degree, but she's going out and she's looking around to see where else she wants to play her final season of college basketball. That's never happened. She lost bets, and they lost bets and a couple of other role players last year, but to have somebody of Kiki's stature decide that they want to play somewhere else for their senior season, it's changed a lot. And I don't know why at 70 Tara would want to keep doing it.
No, I think that's an incredibly valid question. And it seemed as though this was a decision she came to as you listened to her in her news conference, and you could kind of, she was very much at peace with this decision. For those that don't know it, it's 45 years as a head coach in women's basketball, and 38 of those seasons were at Stanford. Yeah. It was time at Idaho. It was time at Ohio State. And then she took this program, which Stanford is a unique beast in its own right, let alone when you add in something like high level trailblazing women's sports, women's basketball, not only being at the leadership of their institution itself, I think being very much a face of what people associated with Stanford. There's those people that come out of Stanford over time that you say, oh yeah, that's a Stanford person or a Stanford athlete, a Katie Ledecky or whatever that might be. But when you think Stanford and I think sports, I think Tara VanDerveer. And I think that's what a lot of people have associated with. But that landscape has changed in so many different ways. Do you think that just as you reflect now and listening to her talk and all of those things, that the end of the Pac-12, this kind of point in this veering in the road, was this the space to say, you know what, this is the right time for me to go?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the end of the Pac-12, I mean, she will say it broke her heart, and I think it really did. Like, I mean, I think she still will tell you, like, I just can't believe this happened. Like, we had such a good thing. That last group text message that she talked about, which she sent to all of the other coaches in the league, before they all started the NCAA tournament, about what an honor it was to do this together, right? Like, she was feeling it for sure. Yeah. And I was feeling it all season. And I think, Stanford is still, they're starting to play catch up, but they're not as far out in front as a lot of other schools on NIL and on the portal. They have limitations within the portal that are structural based on their academic requirements, and Stanford being Stanford, they don't change because everybody else changes. It's a Stanford thing. We're Stanford, we're not doing that. But they had just a few days before that announced an NIL collective that was, I know, has been organized by some high profile athletes, including Andrew Luck and some others. And they made that announcement, and that's going to be helpful. But, there's a lot of things where Stanford's playing from behind and, in the new world order. And, I don't see, now that I see it, now that she's made the announcement, again, I go back to, why does she need to do this? What does she have left to prove?
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything. The other thing I will say is, last season, not this season they just finished, but the previous season, I think, was really difficult for a lot of ways. They were eliminated in the second round. I think there was the team, the players will tell you on the team, there was a lot of division in the team. Things didn't feel Stanford-y. They felt, it was just a rough year. And I think she wanted to put the program back on the track. So she brought back some familiar faces, Tempe Brown as an assistant. She brought in Erica McCall, former player who has great relationships, and Jeanette Poland is getting elevated to assistant coach. Like, she wanted to put the program back on the track. And I think once she felt like she did that, she was done.
Right. And she goes out now as the all-time winningest coach. As you said, Gina Auriemma at UConn, he's right behind her. He will surpass her next season. But yet it is pretty amazing to think that someone in those 38 seasons, and actually 45 as a head coach, but what she has done to be the all-time winningest coach, and absolutely deserves it. And as you said, I say cheers, Coach VanDerveer, and thank you to all of those of us that have been part of women's basketball for a really long time. Thank you. Thank you for laying the groundwork. Thanks for being a trailblazer. That's her athletic director, Bernard Mears, said that. Her name is synonymous with sports and women's basketball, but it would not be what it is today without her pioneering work. And I think that is a great way to look at it. You don't get where you are if you don't have someone like Tara VanDerveer.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a pioneer. She brought an entire side of the country into the women's basketball fold, almost on her own. Basically said, here's the bar. I'm setting it. Come on over, everybody. And they did. And so now women's basketball is a national sport in a way that wasn't when Tara VanDerveer landed at Stanford. It just wasn't. It is, there were moments, there were pockets, there was the USC success, there was the UCLA success. But if you think about the width and the breadth of now the West Coast power in programs, and where all of that came from, it all came from Tara setting a bar at Stanford.
Yeah, it is. You got to set the bar and you have to have sustained success. And that's exactly what it is. Now, the next question is, where do we go from here at Stanford? And we're going to talk about that with Michelle when we come back. Well, I am a competitive person. One of my all-time favorite games when I was a kid was Monopoly. And so my competitive side is a huge fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly where you play on not only one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. But the best part is you get to mess with your friends. You can charge them rent on iconic properties, just like classic Monopoly, but now you can also heist their vaults of riches for yourself, and the leaderboards show who is the biggest Monopoly tycoon, and maybe it could be you. But it's not just my competitive side that loves it. You can team up with friends and people all around the world in timed tournaments to earn huge rewards. So go get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now free at the App Store or on Google Play. Now, have you ever been frustrated with your ticket buy experience to see your favorite Major League Baseball team? Game Time is now the authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes you getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest guaranteed price. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. I live in Kansas City, and right now everybody wants to see the Royals. Who wouldn't? Game Time makes it easy to get to the ballpark. The only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. You can download it anytime. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Hi, everybody. Missy Heidrick back here at Locked On Women's Basketball with Michelle Smith. One more note for all of you. Are you guys watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume sometimes because everyone's shouting? Well, you want to make the switch to Locked On Sports today. Free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Michelle Smith, let's talk a little bit. We we know now that there was a plan. There was a transition plan for this Stanford women's program. Took a little bit of time just to probably get all the I's dotted and the T's crossed. Contracts are, much more complicated these days in college athletics than they were even a decade ago. With that said, Kate Paye now is the 5th head coach in program history at Stanford. She is 50 years old and comes and takes over this program and steps into obviously some incredibly big shoes, but yet seems to be the right person for the job at the right time.
Yeah, Kate Paye has waited patiently, has turned down other offers, Kate has waited for more than a decade. This succession plan has been in place for a long time. When Bernard Muir took the job at Stanford, he accepted the succession place that was already laid out from the previous athletic director. Like, Kate has always been the one. Kate Paye is Stanford, her family is Stanford royalty. Her father played running back at Stanford. Her brother, John Paye, was the quarterback for the football team and the point guard for the basketball team. She came to Stanford as a walk-on. Which she teases Stanford, or, Tara, she'll never let her forget that she was a walk-on. But she was part of the 92 championship team. She was their point guard through a Final Four appearance in 95. She played 6 seasons in the WNBA while getting her JD MBA at Stanford. Practiced law for 5 months and said, nope, this is not for me. And came back to coaching and had a couple of short stints at Pepperdine, San Diego State before Tara brought her back. And for 17 years, she has been stalwart there. She knows that institution up and down. She knows admissions. She's been the recruiting coordinator for multiple years now. She was always going to be the heir apparent. And so I think she's excited about the challenge. Kate is a known quantity to both the existing Stanford players and anybody that they would be recruiting. This is not somebody coming in, and she's retained the entire coaching staff. They elevated Jeanette Poland from player personnel to an assistant coach. So you've got 3 Stanford alums out of the 4 assistant coaches. Like, they're going to lean into who we are as Stanford with Kate Paye and a new era of who we need to be heading into the ACC, heading more deeply into the transfer portal and NIL era. But Kate is a known quantity there. Yeah. So I think particularly at Stanford, with the relationship with admissions that you need to have, with the understanding of the institution, like, I don't think they could, I think anything else would be disruptive. Yeah. That being said, we know, and we watched at Tennessee how hard it's been to hire within the family, right? Like Holly Warlick and then Kelly, like, it's hard to hire within the family. But Stanford's such a unique place that I think that they need to hire somebody who understands Stanford.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it's different for Kate Paye than it might be in a situation with Tennessee where you're following a legend.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And someone who has been there for multiple years as well, living and breathing the uniqueness that is their institution. It's one thing to say, I went to school there, I played there, I got a degree from there. But when you're in the trenches of the program, things like roster management and understanding that, and how they do that there, which is different than everybody else. It's probably got to give their administration they've got to feel a little bit better about it, knowing I don't have to go somewhere else and hope that they can do this. This is someone that gets it. My question to you is this: when we talk about things like roster management in the portal, we know that Kiki Iriafen is in the portal. She is possibly thinking about going somewhere else. But then this move to the ACC, does that change the scope of what this job is for someone like Kate Paye than it was?
No question. No question. Absolutely no question. Because the things that we're talking about now, even the fact that, when, that they lost 3 players last year to the portal. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. It was 4 or 5 years ago. They lost DJ Carrington to a graduate transfer season. Yeah. Losing players in the last 5 or 6 years has not been unheard of for Stanford. But losing Kiki Iriafen after the season that she had, there's a double-edged sword there. You put these kids in summer school because you want to keep them year round. So you start them and you enroll them in summer school. And then somebody like Kiki says, awesome, I'm going to get my degree in 3 years. She has her Stanford degree. She's pulled the value out of her Stanford experience, and maybe she wants to try something different. That being said, right, for Stanford kids, for me, there's a narrow band of schools where you go from Stanford.
Yeah.
There's not, it's not kind of, the world isn't wide open, right? Like,
Right.
so Betts goes to UCLA, a really, really competitive academic institution. If you're going to leave Stanford with your degree and you want a master's somewhere, again, that's why I think the band is narrow, because you're not going Ivy, clearly.
Nope.
You're not, you're going to an academic school. You're
Mhm.
going to a USC, a Duke, a UCLA, someplace with really good, strong competitive programs, but that meets that academic standard, that, stays in that Stanford academic lane.
Right.
And so, I don't know how much of a swinging door there's going to be,
Mhm.
but it also depends on how well this goes next year with the ACC. If those kids are tired, if those kids are like, this travel stinks, I don't
Yeah.
like this, I can't keep up at Stanford with my work
Mhm.
to graduate. If I'm, on a plane, or I'm in a hotel, I'm in the hotel ballroom with the, doing study hall time, like, it's just going to be really interesting to see how players react to what the reality of this move to the ACC is.
No, and I think that's one of the biggest questions that we've all been talking about for the last year and a half, or probably 2+ years, when realignment was dumped in our laps and everyone said, what the heck is going on? Then now you're thinking, well, Stanford and the ACC doesn't really match. Yeah, Wake Forest is probably, and Duke, they're unique in their academic units alike. But yet on the flip side, they're not on the West Coast. The majority of the teams they're going to play are already where they are. They've been doing this. They know how to do it at that level. This is different. The Pac-12 had travel partners. They knew how to schedule. They knew how to get these kids in and out of class. Are those things, and are those guardrails going to be in place? If you're Kate Paye, how do you go about this first season? Do you say, all right, we have got to set standards here, and it's very difficult, I think, maybe to chart what is success going to look like, and how is everybody going to say, yeah, this has been a good thing, or no, this has been a failure.
Well, for starters, they need to get better. They need to
Mhm.
get better in the guard at the guard. Like, let's just talk about the things they need to get better at to be an elite competitive team. They need better guard play. They
Mhm.
need, whether it's their own guards making a leap and bound, or whether it's getting guards in the transfer portal or recruits or whatever, they need to get better. They've also just lost Cameron Brink and now Kiki Uriafen, and they've got to replace posts. Like, there's
Yeah.
a lot of basketball work to do for Kate Paye in
Mhm.
terms of getting this team up to, or back up to, a level that they're used to being.
Yeah.
I think, though, that's the other benefit of Paye already being placed, is that Paye has been in on the meetings and the planning for how this ACC move was going to work. She has an understanding about what the travel might look like. They're already trying to schedule. They'll probably stay on the West Coast for most of the non-conference to
Mhm.
minimize the amount of back and forth. And so I'm sure I would be stunned if they're not going to be playing some of their old friends in the pack.
Yeah.
In the non-conference. And that's going to be the same for everybody, right? Other than the schools that are moving to the Big 12, that don't have as big of a geographic leap.
Mhm.
I would think everybody else has got geography stuff to work out, and but no more so than Stanford. And let's face it, Cal, who doesn't have
Yeah.
some of the advantages that Stanford has financially and otherwise.
Mhm.
But I think, so again, having somebody in place who knows the plan,
Mhm.
I think, is super helpful. But she has a lot of basketball work to do with that team. It's
Yeah.
hard to say you don't imagine Stanford being, I don't know, a ranked team or whatever, but their guard play was exposed in the tournament,
Yeah.
and made it so that when Cameron Brink fouled out in back-to-back games, they couldn't win,
Yeah.
even with Uriafen doing everything she possibly could.
Yeah.
And they've lost Brink now and Uriafen, and
Mhm.
so there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah, there's a lot of gaps on that roster, but I think you're right. I think Kate Paye is the person that is best equipped to be able to do this. And one of the things I found the most unique out of her in bio, when you think about all of the things you talked about earlier, she was born at Stanford Hospital. Just a little
She
bit of tidbit
was.
information for everybody out
Couldn't be
there.
more Stanford if she tried.
Exactly, right? Literally from the moment she came
Yes.
into the world. You are
Yes.
absolutely right. Okay, well, when we come back, we've got to talk more about just all of the craziness that's going on the college side. The WNBA is getting ready to kick off a training camp soon, and we've got to get Michelle's thoughts on all of it. We will be back in just a moment. A message now from our friends at PrizePicks. Well, PrizePicks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. You get in on the playoff action right now and win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks as you and the world's best players take the game to the whole new level during the postseason. Whether it's the Thunder, the Timberwolves, or Denver, who's on your favorites list? PrizePicks even offers injury insurance, which comes in handy during the playoffs so that your entries stay in. They play even if one of your players gets injured. For basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, PrizePicks will have your back and not count that as a loss. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection. PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions and special offers for the biggest moments in sports. So download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. That's the app where you use the code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Hi, everybody. Missy Heidrick, and I am here with Michelle Smith on Locked On Women's Basketball today. It is Monday, April 22nd. We have been talking about all things Stanford women's basketball, one of the biggest changes in the women's game as we saw as the season got over. South Carolina goes undefeated. They run it wire to wire. If you haven't been over to thenexthoops.com, please do so. Michelle has wrote some fantastic pieces, not only about Tara VanDerveer and her legacy, but what comes next for Stanford. On this level, Michelle, as we think about changes, there have been others. And you mentioned it a little bit earlier. Huge change at Tennessee. I think one that caught a lot of people off guard. It hasn't been to the standard, but they went outside. They went outside the Pat Summitt house and they did something very different. I am curious your thoughts on what you think has transpired and sort of what this landscape looks like for Tennessee women's basketball moving forward.
So I have dueling thoughts. One of it is I don't hate that for Tennessee because I think there's been so much pressure on people inside the coaches that have come from in the family.
Yeah.
I think it's been, when you are attached to Pat Summitt in the way that Holly and Kelly were attached to Pat, I think it's just difficult to, break that chain a little bit, right? And so I think we've watched that happen, and we've watched the Tennessee fan base with expectations based on people's relationship to Pat and the program. Mm-hmm. I am underwhelmed by not Caldwell because I don't know enough about how this is all going to go. But I'm a little disappointed that there weren't bigger names in the game who really were gunning for that position. Yeah. And I'm trying to figure out what that tells me about where people think Tennessee is right now. Yeah. If it's apparent to folks, and I'll just throw out names, but the same names that get thrown around, but Kenny ends up in Kentucky and Jeff Walls, his name always seems to float for these things. And, there are other coaches for whom this might have made some sense. And even Kara not wanting to leave Duke for this position. Yes. What does that tell me about what they think about where Tennessee's positioned? And is it about, look, the specter of Pat looms so large over that program still, 15 years later, that, this is just a hard job to take and the expectations of the fan base, and you really have to start over. So, I think it's going to be really interesting to watch. I mean, I think it's going to be fascinating to watch, but I'm not mad about them going outside of the Tennessee family because I think it probably needs to be done at this point, having, it's been a long time since Pat roamed the sidelines, and the program still seems to be having, as a program, a hard time moving forward from that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I kind of looked at it you look at it in that lens and you think, wow, there are folks where I just assumed that they would be knocking on the door wanting that job. It kind of reminded me a little bit of sort of like the North Carolina men's scenario with Roy Williams. And then you had Hubert Davis, and they were trying to figure all of this out and who was in and who was out. And they could never find the right fit in the post Dean era. And then, post Roy. And it was just, it's unique, and it's not like a lot of other places. And so with that said, that uniqueness adds another layer. kind of like Stanford in its own bubble on the West
Right.
Coast. But this Tennessee SEC thing, it's bigger, and there's so many more eyes watching that I
Yeah.
think that's what made it one of those where you're just thinking, I'm surprised this is the name that has risen to the top.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. And I think, but I think it's just worth watching. I think
Mhm.
it's worth watching to see what Kim Caldwell can do, what kind of assistance she brings on, what kind of
Yeah.
reception she gets from athletes in the portal. Do kids still want to play at Tennessee?
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be, this is one of the great programs in the history of the sport. And this is definitely a new era for them.
Yes, and a lot of eyes watching and looking at Knoxville over the course of the next year or two. Another thought as we wrap up here today, and I mentioned the portal at the start. I think, shoot, 2 weeks ago, there was over 1,100 names in the transfer portal. It's beyond craziness. I always I like to allude to it as sort of the wild, wild west, because you just never really 100% sure what's going on. Things coming from all directions, people firing, NIL money coming here, going there. It's just, it is unlike anything that ever has really happened within college athletics. With that said, I think one of the most glaring results of conference realignment and the trickle down and the lights being turned out at the Pac-12 has been what has happened at Oregon State. And you look at the season that Scott Rueck had, and they were in the Elite Eight, and they were a few possessions from being there.
8 players.
8
have
players.
left.
And you
8.
look at that, they are just a couple possessions away from going to the Final Four.
Yep.
And yet now that is a team that looks nothing like it was a year ago or this past season. And it just, to me, this is that trickle down effect that we always said was coming. You start doing these things, whether it's realignment and all of it, you open the floodgates, you can't shut it off.
Right. I wish I thought seeing 1,100 kids' names in the portal felt good. It doesn't feel good for me. And I don't know if it's because I am a change resistant old person who's been doing this a long time, or because I'm not sure, so Oregon State is the most, when you have got 8 players leave a team and their circumstances are the most specific.
Yes.
But it also brings into very sharp relief what this is going to be like for fans.
Mm-hmm.
You get attached to a player, they're there, you put your hopes and dreams on them as a fan for what you hope for the program, and they leave because it doesn't work for them for whatever reason, right? Like, I don't know how this is for fandom, right? Like, I think we need to figure it out. Like, I think player autonomy, I would never be one to say that I don't think that player autonomy is a good thing. I
Mm-hmm.
think that, coaches make decisions all the time, schools make decisions about whether a kid's on a scholarship or not on a scholarship, right? Like, all those decisions get made, and the players now have a significant amount of autonomy. But I think we've talked about this before. There are no guardrails around this. And I'm not sure that seeing this many kids trying to figure out if the grass is greener
Mm-hmm.
is a good thing. And I think it's also sort of, it feels a little self-perpetuating. Like, 2 of my friends went into the portal, maybe I should go too.
Yeah.
There's a little, I'm
Yeah.
not going to discount the fact that that probably is happening. The rumblings I'm hearing is the amount of money that's being thrown at players, and also the contact that people feel like is being made before these kids are done with their current program.
Yes.
They feel like that NIL collectives are reaching out to players while they are playing for somebody else,
Mm-hmm.
and they are offering them money to move.
Yep.
And without any specific accusation, I think there's just a lot of questions being asked about who's directing those collectives to reach out to specific players.
Mm-hmm.
Who's this is getting messy.
Yeah.
I think
I would agree with you.
it's getting messy. The amount of money we're talking about now is making it messy.
Well, and
We're
I
not
think
talking about $10,000 in a car dealership.
no,
Right?
no,
Like,
we're talking about big money.
We're talking
Yeah.
about mid-six figures.
Yes.
And kids turning down several $100,000 to go someplace else where they got offered more money, or kids coming back to their original school and saying, I got offered this here, what can you offer me? Right?
Correct.
Like, the whole thing is we have swung the pendulum from NCAA amateurism and can't get a sandwich for free at a whatever. We have flung this thing open so far the other direction. I don't know how we put it back.
Well, and I think the unique piece of all of this, which is so much of what we have seen, is the expansion and the eyeballs and the butts in the seats and people watching women's basketball, watching women's sports. 5 years ago, we were not having this conversation about collectives and people calling and handing out money and doing all of these things under the table, behind closed doors in women's basketball. We've entered a new realm. It was maybe happening here or there a little bit, kind of weird. There's a few, whether it was the AAU scenario that everyone kind of thought was kind of icky and we weren't 100% sure about it. Now it's all out in the open. But so now not only are we talking about college football and college men's basketball, which are the two biggest eyeballs, but welcome to the party, ladies and gentlemen. Women's sports is involved. And so now everybody's looking and everybody's talking about it. So if you were an athletic administrator or you were a coach at a mid-major women's basketball program who had success and you didn't think that your kids' phones are going to ring now, well, you're behind the 8 ball and you are screwed because those phones are ringing because someone's out there looking at numbers and wanting these kids.
Yep. And it's, the things that we connected to this season in particular in women's basketball, and even to some degree last season, Caitlin Clark spent 4 years at Iowa. She built that record. She built those records at Iowa. It wasn't a story of Caitlin Clark, who played in 3 schools in 4 years and broke the NCAA scoring record, right? Like her identity was that Iowa women's basketball team. If you slide over to Paige Beckers or Aaliyah Edwards, right? They are UConn kids who have been there since the beginning. Even though it was only a couple of years, 3/4 of the people I know probably couldn't tell you where Angel Reese played before she got to LSU. Angel Reese is associated with LSU, that championship game, Kim Mulkey, right? Yeah. And even as Morrow and Van Lith came over, Van Lith is already gone. Like there's just, I still think there's plenty of room in the game, and that I hope we're not going to lose some momentum because people can't keep track of where their favorite players are. If your favorite we're really going to be testing whether people in the college game attach themselves to programs or individual players when those players start hopscotching all over the country.
Nope, you're absolutely right. And that is the world of which we live in now. And we thought it was just maybe a snippet or something that would just be around for a little while. But no, I mean, it is here to stay. This is not, you cannot put the toothpaste back in the tube, ladies and gentlemen. We are here and this is how it goes. Whether there are some guardrails that are created, whether there are some rules that come back into play, it'll be hard to say. But I think that now so much of it has changed that you just have to consistently be prepared to know that if you're a fan of a team, the majority of those kids probably may not be there a year from now. You hope they are. And we hope that people will see how important that is. But that sort of dedication, that sort of loyalty, it's not as much a part of what we see in college athletics anymore as it used to be.
No, I think the other interesting thing that I'm going to keep an eye on is it seems, at least on the surface, that the players are very supportive of one another. Even the kids who leave a program, you've seen messages of support, like, go get them, congratulations, love you, right? Like those kids have built those relationships. Relationships between coaches are going to be really, really interesting to watch. I think this is going to put, and is already putting, a strain on collegial relationships between coaches in conferences, outside of conferences, right? Like you are, when you feel like your kid has been poached, right? And, and that somebody reached out to somebody. And I mean, again, there's just a lot of questions about the timing on all of these these collective outreaches. I mean, we were hearing rumblings that kids were being reached out to on NCAA tournament teams during the NCAA tournament by collectives from other schools. Yeah. It's going to create some feelings.
Oh, many, many and more. You got that right. Thank you, Michelle Smith, for your time and your insights and all of your knowledge as we look at the new era of Stanford women's basketball and so many other things going on. And for all of you that don't know it, This woman right here was inducted into the U.S. Basketball Writers Association Hall of Fame during the Women's Final Four in Cleveland earlier this month. She is one of the very best and has been her own trailblazer. There's no doubt about it. So from all of us who do this, thank you. Thank you for being you and for sharing your insights and your knowledge and all of your fantastic, I think, experiences with all of us, because it goes a long way.
Thank you. Thank you. I think of it as institutional knowledge.
Amen. Amen, sister. All right. Now everyone's going to be looking for you because she has so many things to share with us. So where do they find you now that the basketball season's over?
Well, you'll find me at the Next. I've got a few things to do. You'll find me on Twitter at MaxSmith413, which is right here on your screen. And then I will be going into a little hibernation to write a book about Tara VanDerveer and Stanford, and I'm really excited about that. So I've got between now and December to encapsulate this amazing career and this unique place that this program occupies, and I'm excited to do it.
Well, could not have thought of anyone better to knock that out. So congratulations, and we all can't wait to read it. Michelle Smith, you're the best. You can find me at Missy Heidrick on X, formerly Tona's Twitter, whatever it is. You can follow this podcast at Locked On WBB, and then get over to thenexthoops.com to see Michelle, myself, all of our amazing colleagues, and all the coverage. The WNBA is right around the corner, folks, and you will see everything you need right there. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Happy Earth Day, everyone. Have a fantastic week. Come back and see us. We got you covered, no doubt about it. And everyone is absolutely watching women's sports.